Welcome to the Alcohol Free Life podcast, brought to you by thesoberclub.com. I'm Jamie Grace. This is for you if you've quit the booze or you'd like to, or maybe you're just sober curious. I'll bring you tips and motivation without any judgment, and there'll be inspiration from experts, quit-lit authors, and sober heroes. Hi, and welcome to the podcast. I hope you're enjoying the sunny weather, depending on where you are, of course. I had such a fantastic time in Cornwall. It really was just amazing. I'm still reeling from it, actually, even though it's ages ago. Yeah, it was just so great. So thank you again to everyone who came to that event. And yeah, it was just amazing. And I'm desperate to go back. So if anyone wants to invite me to come and speak, you're very welcome. It was really brilliant. Just a quick mention, if you want to give me a little vote for the podcast, I would so appreciate it in the British Podcast Awards for the listener votes. You literally just do that. Have a look at the show notes and just go to British Podcast Awards /listener votes and just type the name of the podcast, Alcohol Free Life. Make sure Jamie Lee Grace comes up, and then that's it. You vote for it, and then they send you an email, and you click on the email, and that's your job done. And that's your little gesture of goodwill. And I'd so appreciate it. So thank you if you're willing to do that. Thanks also to those people who rocked up to my webinar on exploring a career as a sober coach. Nice to see a bunch of you. It was actually a really small group, and we ended up chatting about our own sobriety. It was really great. It's just so fantastic, isn't it, to connect with like-minded people who really get it, and they get the importance of this. You know, they get just how huge it is, just what a thing it is to have quit alcohol and be focused on living your best life. I will never, not revel in the amazingness of it all. And you've heard me say before that when I was just coming up to a year of sobriety, I remember thinking, oh, I wonder if this is it. I wonder if perhaps it will the light will dim a bit now. But I mean, nothing could be further from the truth. Every single year it gets better. Every year it gets just more interesting, more exciting. New things get unraveled, and you start to like yourself more. And oh my God, there's such a blessing in that, isn't there, really? Anyways, I thought that as we are coming to the close now of Alcohol Awareness Week, I hope you've enjoyed some of the posts, and obviously I've written a few posts, but so have loads of people. Alcohol Change UK have done some great stuff this week on raising awareness, but the theme, of course, is alcohol and work. And I thought, as we're coming to the end of this week, we'll just talk a bit more about that. In the past, I've done interviews with people who their main gig is trying to raise awareness in the workplace. That much more is needed, for sure. There's no doubt about that. We really do need a whole sea change in the culture in the workplace around alcohol. And as I've said so many times before, there's always an emphasis, or nowadays there's often an emphasis, I should say, on well-being, and an emphasis on how we can support the mental health of employees. And yet they seem to manage to forget the alcohol piece in so many cases. So I thought we'd just look at that again in this week's episode. So to that end, I've got an interview with Beverley Densham, who is my co-author of a series of books called Stress to Calm. So these books came about because Bev and I wanted to share some really very simple techniques for reducing stress. And of course, it's not linked to the work I do around alcohol, but it kind of ended up being linked in the sense that we did a whole bunch of surveys and found that these employees of various different professions, when they filled the surveys in, anonymously, of course, so many of them mentioned that they used alcohol as coping mechanism. Now, of course, I shouldn't have been surprised at that, but it did really ram it home that stress in the workplace often, equals drinking to cope, increased alcohol intake to cope. So, there really is a link there. So I thought I'd chat to Bev, and we'll share a couple of tips around reducing stress and perhaps thereby reducing that grabbing alcohol thing. Just on that note, there was a post in our Sober Club this week from one of our Sober Club members who has been going through literally that, a really stressful situation, which she's outlined in the Sober Club group. Just a hugely stressful situation that kind of impacts greatly on who she is, on her identity and her parenting and her standing in her community. Just a really, really difficult situation. And then something else that happened as a result of that, she described that it literally tipped her over the edge. And, she put it so beautifully, I fucked up. And it's just so common, isn't it? People just get to that little breaking point where the stress just feels too much. And then they, in inverted commas, relapse. There's always a lead up to this. There's always a lead up. And of course, our thing is not to judge at all. We've all been there. I've certainly been around the block, God knows how many times before, the light finally came on, the light bulb finally dawned. But in this case, it was just so easy to see that correlation between the stress building and then just the sort of burst of just can't stand it any longer, reach for a drink, because the belief, the ingrained belief is still that alcohol will be the answer. Alcohol will be the, in inverted commas, best stroke, quickest stroke, acceptable way to numb out for a while or to get away from whatever's going on for a while. That belief is so deeply ingrained in us. It's intentionally ingrained in us. Of course, all the alcohol advertising that we see is aimed at making us think that, alcohol is glamorous and that drinking is the way to kick off your shoes and chill and after a hard day's work and celebrate and be in the sunshine. And that's how everything's geared up. We never get to see the reality. I hope you heard last week's podcast where the reality was spelled out. Even one glass is harmful and it doesn't actually benefit us in any way. So in the case of the Sober Club member, I'm really pleased to say she recognized that immediately. She actually said she even hated the taste, hated it, hated the whole experience. So, obviously we're hoping that will now serve as a fantastic reminder to never go back there again. Just don't go back there again. Why would you want to slip back into the sinking sand, as it were, if you've gotten out? So there's no judgment, just a kind of a noticing that it's those old beliefs that keep us on that same path. And it is tricky when we quit alcohol. We've got to form new neural pathways. It takes some doing. It takes a little bit of strength just to kind of constantly remind ourselves to check our own thoughts, to notice our thoughts, to recognize that our thoughts can be separate from us. So if we're going off on an impossible tangent, oh, who cares? I don't care. Sodding hell. Nobody cares. I may as well just drink anyway. We have to catch ourselves and recognize, negative thought only has to last for 90 seconds. I love that factoid. And then we can recreate a new thought. We can choose to recreate the next thought, which we can choose to make a positive one. I am in control. I can surf this urge. There is something else I can do to step away from the noise for a bit. There will be another way. And in the Sober Club, we've got so much content, so much around how we can do something different, even if only for a short time. I'm sure I've mentioned before, we've got a wonderful session with a shaman. It's just a 15-minute shake it out movement medicine workout, he calls it. But any of us can put music on and just shake it out. There are a million things you can do. Anyway, we discuss a couple of stress reducing tips in the interview with Bev. But before that, I thought I would ask a few of the sober coaches that I've trained. I've trained a whole bunch of sober coaches, as you know, and they all do different things. Some are coaching one-to-one, some are doing group coaching, some are running retreats, hosting podcasts, somebody runs a craft cafe, somebody else does sober strolls. There's always so many different ways you can use this training and use these skills. But of course, some of the coaches either are still working in the kind of corporate world, in the executive world. Some are or were in the teaching profession, or certainly in workplace settings, which I don't have any experience of, but they do. So I thought I'd just ask a few of them if they would just share some insights, some tips, perhaps, around the whole idea of alcohol in the workplace. So the organizing of the social events in the workplace, the socializing, what happens at networking events, what's really going on when employees are encouraging, in inverted commas, their employees to drink, whether they realize it or not. So in no particular order, and with no particular theme other than just alcohol and work, here's a bunch of coaches, just voice notes.
Hi, I'm Tony, and after 40 years of working in local government, I'm now working with midlife men who have made a decision to change their relationship with alcohol. Work events can be a challenge sometimes, particularly in the early days. Here's a tip that's worked for me. Is your manager planning a social event, and are you dreading that "what do you want to drink, Tony?" question? Be confident in your reply, and generally your colleagues won't ask any further questions. In the early days, I always called the venue to find out what alcohol-free offerings were available. Then, when the question comes, you can confidently say, "I'll have a Lucky Saint, please." Said with confidence, it's unlikely that your colleagues will question you further. But if you do get a question such as, "You're not drinking, Tony," you can just reply, "No, I've got an early meeting tomorrow and I want to be sharp for it." If this sort of event is worrying you, then just rehearse your replies before you go and make sure that you can say confidently, "I'll just have a Lucky Saint, please."
Hi, I'm Lucy. I am a teacher, have been for nearly 20 years now, and one of the things that I found about end of term or even just typical Friday nights, we've survived to the end of the week, we've survived to Easter, we've survived to the end of the school year gatherings, was that they would always feature alcohol back when I used to drink. And it was likely that colleagues who didn't drink actually just didn't want to attend. And that's a real shame, because it should be such a moment of communal joy that we've succeeded through another year, another set of exams, another term, helping our pupils. So something I would ask anyone who's in education or any job really is just talk to management about whether you could make celebrations and socializing not about alcohol. Centre it around food. Make sure you go to a restaurant with great alcohol-free options. Or could it be about an activity? Could it be something like, going for a walk together, or going to some sort of, physical activity, bowling or axe throwing, I believe is really popular nowadays, just so that there's another focus that isn't around alcohol, because it really is ostracizing for those who don't drink. Something else I would mention to them is gifting. It would be great if people didn't give bottles of Prosecco and things as a thank you gift. Something I'm constantly concerned about is a bottle of Prosecco or wine going to be gifted to me. I would just re-gift it. But, again, it's making an assumption that people enjoy alcohol when many of us don't want to be anywhere near it. And finally, if your company has an employee assistance program, it would be worth asking if it has sober support, sober coaching, or an alcohol support helpline. Those are my top tips. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Vince Hannant, also known as the Exec Sobriety Coach. I've worked in a change consulting capacity for most of my career, and the last 20 years have been at board level. Alcohol's deeply entrenched in business culture, and either entertaining customers, rewarding teams, or perhaps even just coaching situations, meeting people in a bar to talk about performance or project challenges, because it felt disarming and less threatening. It took me a long time to learn that alcohol never helped those personal interactions. I might have felt like it gave courage and created common ground, but the reality is that your professionalism is impaired within 15 minutes of consuming your first mouthful. My guidance now is to go to a coffee shop, not a bar, if you really want to get out of the office environment for a difficult conversation. And when you have no choice but to attend an event where there is alcohol, then, in the early days, just have a plan. Being a designated driver clearly helps. Not many people will talk you out of that. Eventually, if you can achieve sobriety, then in the end, you just don't not drinking as your norm. And you'll be surprised at how many people become envious and wish they could follow your lead. They will start to confess that they do not really enjoy how alcohol impairs their performance, thinking and energy. If, despite this, you find that people really put you under pressure to drink, then be clear in your mind that this says more about them than you. And ask yourself, is this the environment you want to be part of? Take control of living your life to the best of your ability, and I've never found alcohol has a part in that.
Hi, I'm Nigel Harpley. I spent over 10 years as an operations manager in heavy industry before retraining as an alcohol-free coach. On-site safety was always a priority. We'd do a risk assessment before starting a job, discuss all the hazards and put controls in place beforehand. But when the team Christmas hamper includes bottles of wine or end-of-year drinks roll around, did we apply that same safety lens? I know that drinking midweek would leave me half a step slower the next morning. A fairly normal experience, I agree, but half a step or taking a little shortcut can be bad news for safety and results. So food for thought this Alcohol Awareness Week. If your company values zero harm, is the culture around drinking consistent with that? Could you offer alcohol-free choices, just like it's done for vegetarian or gluten-free staff? Next social, make sure quality alcohol-free options are available so everyone can be included without feeling below par the next day. You could say, well, this is how we've always done it. But in safety, we know that tradition isn't a control measure. Shouldn't we use the same risk management mindset, just applied to alcohol instead of the job? Sharper mornings, fewer near misses, looking after people with real care, not just free drinks. Worth a look, right?
Hi, I'm Polly and I work in a high-pressure education setting supporting pupils with special needs. Unlike many of us in those environments, I often turn to alcohol to decompress after intense days. It was just part of the culture. Friday drinks, end-of-term parties, you've earned it glasses of wine, and honestly, it just felt normal until it didn't anymore, and I stopped drinking. I began to really question how we were coping, both individually and as a staff community. So as part of our Trust's wellbeing strategy, I asked if I could create a small info pack for Dry January just to raise awareness. I also offered an optional after-hours session where I shared facts about alcohol and some practical tools to help people explore alcohol-free living. And it was a Zoom with about 20 people on that joined me, and the response was surprisingly positive. A year later, one colleague messaged me to say that they hadn't had a drink since that session. That really blew me away. So here's my tip. If you are alcohol-free or even sober curious, don't be afraid to ask your organisation if they've got anything in place. So you could suggest a different kind of staff outing or ask to share some simple resources that you can just leave in the staff room. Sometimes just starting that conversation plants a seed for someone else, as it did in my case. So spreading the word really matters, even if you do it quietly. So chats about it with colleagues. Some people won't be interested, but it's surprising how many people are looking to make some changes for health reasons. So even if you look at it from that angle, it can really make a difference to changing the culture in our workplaces. Yeah, give it a go. All the best.
Hi, I'm Toby, a sober coach in Switzerland. Back in the mid to late 1990s, gives away my age, I worked at Reuters, where alcohol was, basically part of the job description. Flying business class across Europe, champagne flowing, business lounges stocked with free drinks. Who could resist? Lavish client dinners, closing the hotel bar. It was all par for the course. Every Friday at 5 p.m., there was an open bar in the office to celebrate the week, and even lunch meetings often ended with a bottle of wine or two. I recall my boss even telling me once I wasn't spending enough on client entertainment during my business trips. Non-alcoholic options weren't even discussed. It was like an extension of university life, in essence. Looking back, it's clear how normalized and pressured that culture was, and may still be today in some places. My tip today, advocate for more inclusive team events and make sure that non-drinkers, whether by choice, faith, or recovery, feel equally welcome and supported. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. So you heard Tony and Toby and Lucy and Polly and Nigel and Vince. Thanks for those. I really appreciate it. As promised, then, the Stress to Calm series is out. We have Stress to Calm for lawyers, Stress to Calm for nurses, Stress to Calm for teachers, and there'll be a generic one out soon. So I thought I'd have a chat with Beverley Densham, and you can get all of those books. And really, as we say in this piece, the exercises, the tips, the tools, really anyone can use them. They're available to all. So, talking about alcohol in the workplace and stress generally, some of you may know that I'm the co-author of a series of books, Stress to Calm in 7 Minutes, and I'm joined by my co-author, Beverley Densham. How you doing?
Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be here to talk about stress and everything.
Yeah, great to chat to you, Bev. Well, obviously you've been on the podcast before, and you're no stranger to the Sober Club because you've done stuff for us in the Sober Club. I know you've been sober for what, about 100 years or something? It's longer than me.
It feels like I've never counted it, but it's definitely over 15 years now. Maybe it's 20. I'm really not sure. I'll have to work it out, but a long time.
Amazing. Yeah, absolutely. Fantastic. And obviously among the many things you do, angel work, Pilates, I know you've got lots of strings to your bow. But helping people reduce stress, I know, is a very big thing for you. And the books that we did together, Stress to Calm in 7 Minutes. Well, we did a series, didn't we, for different professions. So one for lawyers, one for teachers, one for nurses. But actually, the reality is we can talk generically because this stuff applies to everyone, whatever industry you're in, doesn't it?
It does, to be quite honest. I mean, everybody can use the tools, and stress does affect everybody, but not just at work, obviously, but personally as well.
Yeah. So what I thought would be really good to share is because when I was sort of looking into this whole issue of alcohol and work, which is, kind of loosely the theme for Alcohol Awareness Week. Of course, you can look at it from loads of different angles, but what I remembered really acutely was that when we were doing the research for these books, for each book, we did a survey and we allowed people to chip in anonymously. I can't remember the exact questions we asked them, but I'm sure you'll agree some of the kind of answers that came back were, I mean, actually quite heartbreaking, weren't they? Let's just start with, well, I don't know, where do you want to start? Let's start with the nurses one. I was expecting high levels of stress, but I don't think I was expecting the responses we got. What about you?
I think both of us cried with some of the answers, and I think because it was anonymous, they could be honest, and it's just quite upsetting, some of it, really, because of course they've gone into the different professions because they're heart-centered, they love it, they want to help people and all of those things, but it's like many of them have forgotten about themselves within it and have ended up in a sometimes harrowing, exhausted, angry, short fuse, extremely stressed place, and not necessarily going for the healthy coping mechanisms. And as you said, turning to things like alcohol in a very negative way, or smoking more, or whatever it might be.
Yeah. I mean, just to quote a couple of the comments that came in, obviously, as I say, there's no names, but one was a registered nurse, 32 years in the NHS, said that she did have a good diet, in her opinion, and good exercise, but she turns to alcohol as a way to cope with the overwhelming pressure and the anxiety that she gets. And several people said they had really poor sleep and were waking up at 4 a.m. or whatever. And then there was another one, actually that's on our teachers book, but there's another nurse, isn't there, who actually is happy to be named. Just tell us a bit about Anne, because I know you've spoken to Anne at length, because she's written her own book.
Anne Gerling's author of Journey to Chocolate. She was nurse for a very, 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 very long time, and she was the one I was just talking about a little bit there, that there was the exhaustion. She was very angry. She got completely burnt out. So part of her story is that she completely burnt out. And she admitted to having a short fuse and smoking and drinking alcohol. And there was nothing healthy at all going on, so much so that she did actually leave the profession in the end. And has a new career now, and is now this super healthy, happy, inspired person now. But the person she was then was, she admitted, is a very, very different person.
Yeah. And then we did a book, Stress to Calm for Teachers. So we were looking at, that people within the educational profession. And again, it was right across the board, wasn't it? We had everyone responses from head teachers down to teaching assistants, both private schools and regular schools. But that one, again, that was a shocker for me, because what came across from those surveys was the fact that these pretty much everyone who answered that survey loved working with the kids, and it obviously had an absolute heart for what they were doing. They loved that part of the job, the bit they'd gone into teaching, but everything else got in the way: the red tape, the admin, the what was it? Several of them said, I spend my life sort of on the edge, waiting for the call from Ofsted or whatever. Do you remember those? I mean, the stress levels from the teachers. God, I really wasn't expecting that.
Yeah, and also the exhaustion really came through a lot as well. And, they were admitting that, the anxiety and stress had got so high that they'd seen the doctor and also be on antidepressants. The sleep problem was happening with many of them. And some of them admitting, the alcohol, the units increasing, especially at the weekends, but some of them all week long. And they're very aware of that, and they're so exhausted, I think even fatigued. The impression I got that they just didn't have anything left at the end of the day to want to cook a dinner, and it would be like, it sounded like ready meal time a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one here who said, I eat poorly, sugary snacks are a pick-me-up. Especially when there's no time to eat properly. Another one said, I wake up and think about work in the middle of the night. And in fact, we did an article, didn't we, for an education magazine called The Sunday Scaries, because that's the kind of term coined for how teachers feel the night before a new work week. How terrible is that when they absolutely love their job and they've clearly got so much to offer? There's something going wrong, isn't there? And then lawyers, I'm sure everything we're talking about now could equate to every profession. It's just that was what we honed in on. Tell us a bit about lawyers, because you've done some work with lawyers. Tell us about the particular stress that they seem to come under.
Well, because we did obviously interview, on the survey side of things, I have interviewed them as well on my podcast, but there's so much going on with the lawyers, because there's also different lawyers within law. So the ones who are dealing with family law, all of that side of things. Some of them were talking about vicarious trauma and how that sort of the trauma of their clients can also affect them, just literally the people they're wanting to help and are helping or are protecting. That side of the stress came up as well. But also on the other side, it could be their billable hours and the pressure. They even some of them were talking about how they're compared to other people within their profession, with how they're achieving. I get the impression that it's glamorized a lot, being a workaholic in that profession. But there are amazing law firms that I've worked with, like Woodstock Legal Services, for example, who look after their team, and I've taught them stress management. And they are wanting the opposite for their team, that they are actually going to cope and hopefully not be turning to the more negative things. But it was actually Anna Illingworth, who I can talk about, who wrote the forward to our book from Rowbury Morris Solicitors. she inspired the whole thing. This whole thing, we wouldn't be talking now if it wasn't for Anna, because Anna was so stressed, owned her own, law firm and partner and everything. And the stress was getting her to her so much that she did reach out for help with the stress with me. And that's when, it was a revelation, and breathing was a game changer for her. And she's kind of turned, she can be in control of her day by purely doing 7 minutes of our Stress to Calm tools a day. And that led to working with her law firm. And then of course it led to our books. But she's so grateful because she's empowered with a toolbox now that she can tap into to sort herself out when things do get more stressful, but also it's preventative and resilience building when you do it regularly. So Anna was very pivotal in, of course, helped her, and then we've helped her with the book, and then the book for her team and teaching her team at Rowbury Morris. But these things we can tap into, and so sometimes things happen and you meet someone somewhere and then you help that person, and then it goes on to the books and helping other people, which I think a lot of people, there was a barrister I talked to on my podcast called Malvika, and she did try to take her own life. And we were on a webinar together talking about mental health. She did it from the law side, and I obviously did it from the Stress to Calm side. So, things can be done to help in each profession and each person, and it's good when we're all speaking out about it, because mental health is so precious. And luckily, she did get the help that she needed, and now she's being an advocate to help others with their mental health too.
Yeah, sure. So obviously, as you say, we have to take back control and look at what we can do to support ourselves, and we'll talk more about that in a moment. But just briefly, let's just chat just for a moment about the whole, because obviously everything we've been talking about could relate to any profession, and there'll be people listening, who work in completely different professions, and they're thinking to themselves, well, you want to try coming round my gaff on a Friday afternoon, because that was actually another thing that came out of the survey, was that drinking even within the workplace is often actively encouraged. Perhaps it's a Friday afternoon drinks or whatever, and then they wheel the drinks trolley in, or they all go somewhere, and it's expected of you. And I've had lots of female clients over the years who've said they're really uncomfortable that they're seen to be lightweights if they can't keep up with the guys at work events and networking events and all the rest of it. And we know obviously that within many workplace situations, people who don't drink alcohol are just left to feel awkward. You have to put a new shell of armor on in many scenarios, which is utterly ridiculous. And yet we know that actually alcohol, people drinking in the workplace or out of the workplace, but then not rocking up for work, is a huge impact on productivity and God knows what. So just before we go on to the kind of some of the tips that we've used in our book to help people manage their own stress, let's just talk briefly about workplace stress generally, and the whole issue of whether people are drinking to cope. But just looking at the stress, what can people do? What have you seen people do, however small, that can make an impact? I suppose what I'm trying to say is, because of course it's not within my experience, because I don't rock up to a job anywhere, but I'm guessing if I did, I'd want to be able to in some small way try to make a difference. I mean, is it as simple as go to your manager, or your line manager or your HR department and say, okay, there's too much stress here and this is overwhelming? Is it as simple as that? I don't know. Does anything come out of the people you've worked with that is a way of employees making a difference on the workplace stress? That was a hell of a long question. Sorry. Do what you can with that.
Okay, so of course some companies do have wellbeing teams, and the making a difference thing, I think definitely speak to the director wellbeing team. What I've noticed is with most companies is they are not taking it seriously. They are not doing it regularly. the thing is, stress is like the waves of the sea. There are good times of life, there are challenging times of life, there are sad times of life, and there are different work pressures going on for anyone. So if you're not supporting your work, your team, every day and regularly, then the support isn't there enough. I mean, there's a very big varying degree of how much support is going on. Some companies, yes, they are doing lots of different, positive things. But I think I also hear that there can be good things in place, but then the excuse from maybe half the team or however many the team is only 25% maybe will turn up when there's something put on. And there's a very, very big excuse. Malvika, who's the barrister, who I know and chatted to, who's the big advocate of mental health, is even her excuse was, I haven't got time. Oh, it gets to 10, 11 o'clock. I'm exhausted. And then I'm scrolling on my phone. And she even wrote a blog saying, Beverley, we on our podcast chat, Beverley caught me out and wasn't having any of it about my excuse of I don't have time. I think most people think it does have to take time, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time. I mean, in the middle of a working day, you can't go off and do your favorite hobby, sport or passion for, whether that's going off for a run every hour because you got stressed, or going for a swim, or going for a long hike, or going sailing. You can't be doing that every hour of the day. It's not practical. And even if you have got hobbies, passions and sports, which is great, it's not enough to keep people going in that working day. So it's finding practical things that they can do for that minute or 7 minutes. And I think one of the biggest game changers I have noticed is sprinkling those tools, the stress to calm tools, into the day. And the toilet, cubicle, bathroom
becomes your friend,
is one of the best
exactly
places. I mean, if you're in an intense profession like nursing, teaching, there is very little privacy. There's always somebody wanting your attention, and a lot of professions as well, or just generally, or just people who've got family as well, whatever it might be. Just taking an extra minute for one of my clients, that one extra minute in the bathroom when they expect to go to another meeting, back-to-back meeting, they're in the financial profession. And I'm talking about this person and then just taking that extra minute, and her day actually didn't change much, but she transformed in how she felt, how empowered she was, stronger, calmer, more resilient, happier, more in control of the day. And things can change and shift just like that in a minute.
Yeah. So just back on how we can actually make our employers aware of the need for this. I remember one of the people in our survey, I think it was a teacher, saying that and you're right, so often things are put in place, but people don't use them. And what came out of our survey was that they're the wrong things they're putting in place so often. They're not actually doable. As you say, they're kind of big things. I remember on the survey, somebody said that their workplace had got some funding or whatever for well-being. So they put on these events, going canoeing or whatever it is. Well, this is a woman with 3 kids trying to hold down a full-time job. There ain't no way she's going to be going canoeing to relieve her stress. So it's a lovely thought, but not practical for many of the people. I remember a teacher saying that their management team decided to reward, in inverted commas, the staff every Friday afternoon. And the reward was at 3:30, you come to the staff room and you have, cake and whatever it is. But at 3:30 on Friday afternoon, you want to get home, right? So it's just not done in the right way, even though they may mean well. So I think part of this has to be people, the more that we can communicate what we actually need. And as you say, maybe it's more toilet breaks.
It's more toilet breaks, everyone. It's just more toilet breaks, everybody. Take time on your toilet break to not scroll on your phone, but to do something practical for you. But on that note of what you're saying, I taught this amazing school stress management and did a book signing and everything for them. But when was it put on? Loads of the, there's massive secondary school. But it was put on after school. So all the ones doing the school run couldn't make it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, I was the same. I did something
it needs to be done. It does need to be done when everybody can attend.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah, I did something for an NHS trust, and it was a lunch hour. I mean, I wouldn't have rocked up to my talk in my lunch hour. I'd have gone and got some fresh air, So, yeah, it is. I'm sure lots of companies mean well, and there's definitely more budget for it now, isn't there? There's definitely people in the right space in terms of the well-being. Although, what we know in the work that I do is that they very rarely want to cover alcohol because that's a bridge too far. Because the managers are all drinking themselves, so they definitely don't want to bring in too much around alcohol awareness. So that's a tricky one.
I'd like to just pause on that point because, like, I've been to a well-being event recently, and I was really, I mean, we're talking everybody's in the well-being profession, from psychologists to counselors to, like myself. And guess what? So I roll up. Would you like a drink? All the drinks that were there on arrival were all alcoholic. They had to go to a separate room to get my drink.
Oh yeah. Well, we know about that, sure enough.
I
mean, there's one of my sober club members. I always remember her saying she'd started a little mini war at her kids' school because every whatever it is, Easter and Christmas and whatever, they have school raffles, and everyone's encouraged to bring bottles of alcohol for the school raffle prizes. And she actually led this whole campaign and said, let's not do that. Let's actually not do that. Let's do something else. Let's do something, that is a reasonable gift, in inverted commas, that does not involve toxic drug. Let's do that. And she won her little fight. It was a small win, but those things are important. When people are telling their HR team or their managers where they want to go out for their whatever it is, summer trip or Christmas trip or whatever, make it somewhere where you've got some decent alcohol-free drinks, for God's sake. It's so important. I mean, I hope times are changing. I really hope so. But back on the stress then, because obviously the reason we're talking about this is because many of these people who are stressed, whether from the workplace or whatever, the workplace is possibly exacerbating stress they've already got going on, etc., etc. Alcohol is seen as a coping mechanism. It just is. And it's legal, and we know that, and everyone does it, so it's seen as the done thing, and then you're expected to do it at work. So because that's the drug that people reach for, many people see it as the antidote to their stress, until of course they finally realize it isn't. It's just pushing them further down the booze elevator. But let's go back to the stress then, and in the books that we've put together, what we're really saying, I mean, the books are a very simple introduction to some techniques and tools that work. But the most important thing, as you were saying earlier, is they work fast. So we've got a whole chapter on meditation and a whole chapter on breath work and a whole chapter on journaling, but you don't have to levitate for 20 minutes a day or spend hours on this. You really can make a difference with a tiny amount of time. And that's the key, isn't it?
Yeah, I found with the one-to-one programs that I've taught as well, you can work with somebody for quite a short space of time. And even things like sleep can be transformed. I've had somebody with insomnia, and just by doing all of this and learning it properly and practicing it daily and incorporating it into their day, including the toilet breaks, standing up, breathing, they haven't got those, they aren't in that overwhelm. They aren't in that, struggling to sleep and waking in the night and being awake for hours and just being a complete stress head, really. They're loving and living life again. And, it doesn't have to, as you say, it can work fast, and it doesn't have to take a lot of time.
Yeah, I think a lot of it is about finding ways to bring ourselves back to balance, just to remember, whatever you've got going on, however, scary the court case feels, however much paperwork you've got, however, whatever is going on, if you're safe in the moment, obviously, if you're not, you need to leg it, but if you're safe in the moment, there will always be something you can do that just brings you back to balance in that moment. And when we can get into the habit of doing those things regularly, as you say, if necessary, go to the loo, then that's going to make just a massive difference, I know, years ago, certainly when I was drinking, I'd often get into kind of panic mode. I could feel myself right on the edge right on the edge of going into absolute overwhelm, and panic. I've had lots of clients who've had burnout, which is, I'm sure you've come across many people who've had burnout. It's an interesting thing, because afterwards I've asked several clients, looking back, can you see what happened now? I bet you've had that question with people. It's a really interesting one, isn't it? Because they nearly always say, well, looking back, yes, I can see that I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't eating properly. I was X and Y. I can see that I was on that sort of treadmill. In fact, I almost knew it was coming, and still I carried on. Have you had people say that?
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is in the head, and then they're not looking after the body either.
Exactly.
Like it's just so overwhelming in the head that they can't see the wood through the trees, basically.
Yeah, it's a scary thing.
And one client found me. I was bitten by it's not really bad, but it wasn't nice. I was bitten by a dog on New Year's Eve, and somebody was really kind to me, and afterwards, and I did have to go to medical help, but anyway, they discovered that I taught breathing and the stress to calm tools, and that was their turning point, me being bitten by the dog, finding out she was telling me to breathe, which was quite funny. I said, that's quite fun. Even that, in between me shaking and being in shock, I was I said, so funnily enough, thank you so much for helping me breathe, but I actually teach breathing. But if you are in shock or something like that, some of your logicalness will go out the window. But because of that, sometimes you need something. Listen to this podcast or whatever it might be, something to just make like a light switch to make that change. And for her, it's me being bitten by a dog, her helping me, finding out I teach breathing and stress to calm, and that turned around her whole overwhelm and burnout that was going on.
Yeah. So let's just share one or two of the tips from the book then, because I think what's really good about focusing on ways of reducing stress is that in so doing, you're going to help yourself find ways of not reaching for the drink, because we know, don't we? It's the, so what are the thoughts that are coming in? What's the kind of panic feeling? It's like, oh my God, I need to escape in this moment. What do? I reach for a drink because that's what I've always done. So if we can kind of put that pause in and just help people remember, okay, so when you start to feel stressed, overwhelmed, panicky, whatever it might be, put that pause in. And even if you can only take 1 minute, there are things you can do. So, let's start with the breath. Let's share. Do you want to just share one really simple breathing technique, a really simple one that anyone can remember?
Yeah, so just literally sitting, standing, lying down, eyes open, eyes closed, walking, however you like. A lot of people find eyes closed is good, but you can do eyes open as well. Just good posture, close your eyes and just breathing in, just nice, slow breathing in through your nose and then out through your mouth. And just keep that going for a minute, relaxing more on each out breath and just scanning through your body and relaxing more on each out breath. And once you've done that for 1 minute, then off you go again. And you can do that standing in the toilet too.
Yeah, exactly. And there's the kind of box breathing exercise that a lot of people are aware of as well, which can be quite useful, where you're literally just sort of visualizing yourself going up the side and along the top of a box.
That one's used a lot by psychologists and therapists, and NHS recommend it too. But I do find that I teach more triangle breathing, which I find a higher success rate with it, because a lot of people find box breathing really hard. With triangle breathing, you breathe in for 4, hold your breath for 4, and then exhale for 4, and then off you go again.
So it's simpler.
It's simpler, and a lot of people don't. The other version, a lot of people find too hard and just give up. Whereas with triangle breathing, a lot of people find, oh, that's actually quite comfortable. You might need an extra breath in between. That's absolutely fine. But you can do that sitting, standing, lying down, walking, and even like firefighters in America are using that type of breathing on a shift. As well as after, to recover physically and mentally. And if you want to be on the ball or you get stressed, do a bit of one of those breathing techniques or both of them.
Yeah, fantastic. Do you want to share one other of the tips that's in the book, something really simple, that people can do without needing to do an awful lot of practice?
Oh, there's so many. There's the stretching, there's the journaling, there's positive affirmations.
Yeah, let's talk about journaling, because, you know, again, in the book, we've got a whole chapter on the power of journaling and how if you can take some time to do sort of 3 or 4 pages, you know, as Julia Cameron would call it, morning pages. It's brilliant if you're in the early weeks of quitting alcohol. I recommend it to everyone. It's an amazing thing to do. Just literally stream of consciousness, let it all out, better out than in, let it all go. Yeah. But what we've got in the book is a simpler way of just narrowing it down to literally 1 minute. So just remind us how it works.
Yeah. So we've got a list of affirmations you can choose. I've actually chosen one from my deck of affirmation cards. I chose the exercise one today. So how to journal in 1 minute. Either pick an affirmation, make up an affirmation, pick an affirmation from our book or from a deck of cards, shuffle, fan them out, pick a card. So today I went for I enjoy exercise. And then what you do, I love to walk, swim, or enjoy my favorite hobby. You write that down with your pen and your notebook, and then for 1 minute you write down what that actually means to you today. And you can set a timer if you want, on your marks, get set, go. If you want to do it for longer, you can. And it's amazing how much can come out in 1 minute. And there is research and science behind each of the tools, including journaling, which it is amazing for mental health, reducing stress, reducing anxiety, but also it's inspirational, solution finding, so many things, expressing how you feel. That's how to do it in 1 minute.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important to stress that if you can use a pen and paper, as you say, it's really good for the cognitive brain. If you really can't write, then you can use a voice note. But it does help if you can actually use a pen and write it. Because bear in mind, you don't have to have good handwriting or anything. You're not necessarily going to ever look at it again or go back and edit it. It's the process of getting it out. And I know that for me, in the early weeks of quitting alcohol, when I felt really, really shaky and raw and vulnerable, and I had no bloody idea who I was. I'd lost any sense of identity. I just didn't know who I was. Journaling was unbelievably helpful, even though there were many, many days when I would simply write a load of old waffle, and or maybe I'd find myself writing, I don't know what to write. I'm not thinking anything. And this is annoying. But over time, it was very interesting how when I'd perhaps go for a walk, I would think back to something I'd written down, and it's as if the answer would appear if it was a problem. You know, it's so powerful.
It's absolutely amazing. It's become a complete passion of my own in my personal life, and it's every time I teach it, I find it quite exciting, I have to say.
Yeah, totally. So anyways, they're just 2 of the, we go into a lot more depth, but the books are Stress to Calm in 7 minutes for lawyers, and then there's one for teachers, and there's one for nurses, and hopefully we're going to do a generic one soon. But actually, the reality is anyone can use any of them, because the tools work for you, whatever you're doing. So is there anything else you'd like to share, Bev, just in relation to sort of stress in the workplace?
I would just like to say, give yourself permission to take 1 minute. And if you want to really shift and improve things and feel happier and better in your mental health and feel fantastic, treat yourself, sprinkle in 7 minutes.
Yeah, do the full 7. Yeah.
Do the 7 all in a row. If you're very stressed, do 7 in a row. You can treat yourself to 7 anyway, and sprinkle a minute, 7 minutes into your day is amazing. And don't forget the tip of doing one of those tips when you're in the bathroom.
Yeah, absolutely. There's going to be bosses and managers listening all over the country thinking, what the hell are they on about? Everyone's going to be asking to go to the loo. Well, not that you should have to ask, but you know what I mean. It's a good tip. Bev, just tell us where we can find your work.
You can find my work at mindfulnesspilates.com, and I'm Beverley Densham everywhere on social media.
Brilliant. Thank you, Bev. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
We'll put the link in the show notes. Just a reminder, if you're willing to vote for the podcast, I'd so appreciate it. British Podcast Awards /listener votes. And I'll put the link in the show notes. It's take you 2 seconds, but it's so appreciated. Just in case you are interested in my Platinum Awards, well, we're talking awards, That's something completely different. Well, it's kind of connected because it's all about well-being. It's in its 10th year for natural products and services and for authors, coaches, practitioners. Basically, if you do anything linked to holistic living and well-being, check it out because you might be interested in submitting your product or info about your service, the work that you do. The whole idea is to raise awareness, really. So we do lots of promo along the way. And we also need your votes for that. So do please check it out. If you're a brand or you're a coach or a practitioner, platinumawards.co.uk. And if you'd just like to vote or nominate for your favourite natural product or service, then check out the sneak previews at imperfectlynatural.com. I'll pop that in the show notes because that's a lot to remember. Message me if you're interested in Sober Coach training, of course. And don't forget the Sober Club. It's low cost. It's really high value. We have so much content in there, so much stuff in our member archive, but also our private group where magic happens. That connection is just absolutely key. The messages in there, the support that you get, the love bombing, literally, in a totally non-judgmental way. It's really everything. And we also have a course, Get the Buzz Without the Booze. So there's a lot going on and it's super cheap. Join us for a month. You can always leave if you don't like it. And yeah, it would be lovely to have you part of the Sober Club. It's small, it's supportive, and you'd be very welcome. If you don't want to join us in the Sober Club, but you do want to support this work, then you can buy me a coffee. That's the site, buymeacoffee.com/genuinely Grace. But of course, I'd much rather have a coffee in person. So if, we can meet up, that would be even better. I'll let you know where I'm going to be next in terms of events. I think the next book date that I'm doing is the Chiswick Book Festival, going to be there mid-September. But we'll also have another live podcast at Club Soda at some point. And of course, I'll be setting up another Family Constellations very soon too. Don't forget to reach out if you're struggling. I say this most weeks. But still, I get messages from people who say, I kind of went back down the rabbit hole again. I went back down the booze elevator. I wish I'd reached out straight away. Don't wait. Just do it. Do it now. If you're struggling, just reach out. Obviously, I'd love it if you want to join us in the Sober Club. But if not, just send me a message. I honestly will reply to every message I get as long as I see it. And I'm very easy to find on social media at Genuinely Grace. So drop me a message. And if you're doing this and you don't want to join a group or you don't want to get connected, then at least tell someone. Tell someone you're doing it. Make it real. Otherwise, it's just you and the wine witch if she decides to pop by. Tell someone you're doing this. Have yourself a fantastic week. See you soon. Thank you for listening to the Alcohol Free Life podcast brought to you by the Sober Club. Please rate and review. And if you want support, accountability and inspiration, and you want to live your best life without the booze, check out thesoberclub.com.